Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. I hope all our listeners exposed to the storms of this week are safe and managing the cleanup reasonably well. Coming up on this week's show.
Let's look at our breeding performance. It's one to be forgotten. It was a disaster in terms of stock bulls being purchased. We'd one infertile bull, we had a sub-fertile bull. But that's something that every farm in the country, I suppose, has to deal with, and we had to deal with the same.
Our beef specialist Adam Woods gives us the highs and lows from the first year of Tullamore Farm's operation.
Just pushing again there now. I'd expect to see the hooves out at this stage. Oh, she's getting up. Come on, Pet, let's see those hooves out.
And calving a cow in Limerick. How else would you want to bring in the new year? But first, our correspondent Tommy Moyles was at a MACRA meeting recently. He asked a number of young farmers how they see the big questions for their future, starting with Brexit.
I'm Marie Carney and I'm from South Kilkenny.
And Marie, what sort of a challenge do you think Brexit will pose for us?
The markets, it's going to change markets, and farmers are not going to be able to know what the price they're going to get, and it's just uncertainty for farmers in every sector. That's dairy, beef, tillage, whatever you're in. It'll just pose different challenges, and this uncertainty of not knowing what's coming around the corner.
What do you think the farming landscape will look like in 2030 in your area? Will it change much from now?
I think it will. I think a lot of farmers are building, and just farmers are getting bigger. A lot down our way is tillage, so there'll be ditches knocked and bigger fields. I'd say it'll be more of just a general landscape. There won't be much in it, and farms are getting bigger and infrastructure, so just more of a built-up environment.
Will the area stay in tillage, do you think?
We're doing tillage at home, but a lot of lads with the last 3 years with tillage being poor in prices, a lot of farmers are going switching towards dairy and maybe making their beef better. So maybe tillage will go down if it don't improve and if the government don't help the tillage farmer.
My name is Caroline Burke. I'm from Clonakilty, County Cork.
Caroline, what sort of an opportunity or difficulty will Brexit be for Irish farming?
I reckon no one really knows yet, and it mightn't even go ahead. So I don't think it's worth worrying too much about at the moment, but we can only, I suppose, sustainability, I reckon. We need to kind of concentrate on that, and I suppose things like labour shortage going forward is a bigger issue, I think, anyway, personally.
Farming in 2030, what sort of landscape do you see developing around Clonakilty?
I reckon more cows, bigger farms. I suppose a lot of older people, maybe, I know a lot of people that have no children, or maybe children that have no interest, that them farms be leased out or sold, and more cows. And
Michael Dunn, fourth year agriculture student in CIT.
Michael, what do you make of Brexit?
I suppose it's going to have a big impact on farming, really, and especially Irish farming and farming in Europe. And I suppose it's going to be difficult to see where it's going to go. But I suppose it's good for Ireland in a way, like to give them. We'll be able to export to China maybe, and try to be. Our English market will be different. They'll still have to buy food, like, so that's a big problem. So we should do all right out of it, I'd say.
Where do you see farming in 2030? What do you think the farming landscape will be like?
I suppose there'll be a lot of bigger farms, probably less people working, but a lot more educated people working. A lot more technology in farming, definitely. Scale will be bigger. Will be a much global market, I'd say. We'll be selling China. Will be our big market probably, but then Europe will still have to be fed, like, and across Europe dairy farming seems to be getting a bit harder and margins a lot tighter. So maybe we'll sell a lot of our milk in Europe and not have to go too far to sell it either. So I'd say it's looking good though. It's looking good for Ireland especially, and we have good milk to sell and a good product. It's just to have the people to sell it now and get it sold will be the big problem, like.
Shane Healy from Crookstone, County Cork.
Shane, what sort of a challenge do you think Brexit will be, or is it an opportunity?
It's very hard to know at the meantime. We don't know what's going to happen. Will there be a hard Brexit or soft Brexit with border controls and everything? But look, I can't see them survive without Irish agriculture, so I see it as maybe an opportunity.
And where do you see farming in 2030? Will there be a lot of change in kind of the farming landscape in your area?
Certainly beef farming is getting more and more scarce, which is a worry. There's no young people getting into it, and everyone's turning to dairy, but that's going to have to change too. So
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
2017 was the first year of operation for the Irish Farmers Journal's demonstration cattle and sheep farm in Tullamore. Our beef editor Adam Woods spoke to Quinn Milligan about some of the highs and lows over the year and what plans he has for 2018.
A massive undertaking. I think anyone would agree with that. I mean, how's it gone? Has it gone smoothly in terms of the setup so far?
Yeah, since we've started, Hannah, it's been unbelievable the amount of work that had to be done on the farm. I suppose we had a digger in for 2 months, cleaning back hedges, not taking out hedges, but cleaning back hedges to original hedge lines and making sure we have the full grazing area available to us. We've a couple of kilometres of roadway put down. We've 10,000 metres of sheep fencing completed there in the last 2 months. We've cattle fencing as well. So while the farm was managed in a good way, I suppose, to implement a high stocking rate that we're going to do a 2.7 livestock unit per hectare stocking rate. So we need infrastructure to be really good, and we've made some changes to sheds as well. So a huge amount of our time over the last 12 months has been sort of implementing all those changes, and I suppose for 2018 it's down to the nitty gritty of farming and actually looking after animals and making sure that our output is very high and we keep an eye on variable costs. But for the last 12 months it's been set up and I suppose implementing our stock and getting our stock onto the farm, and all of that has went pretty smooth. I suppose some jobs have taken longer than others. In terms of reseeding, we've 80% of the farm reseeded. In terms of soil fertility, we have a bit of an issue there with potassium, in that 80% of the farm is low in potassium, and we have to be mindful, I suppose, in terms of building that, because if we build it too quickly, we make potassium maybe very available to animals grazing, and then we could have tetany issues, and that's probably one of the low points as well in terms of tetany issues last spring. So we need to be mindful of that, and in terms of taking maybe things a little bit slower in terms of trying to build that index. But other than that, things has been running quite smooth.
I was there myself on the open day and I was impressed, and I say it in unbiased because I wasn't employed by the Journal at the time, but I was impressed. But you touched upon a low point there, so what were some of the high points and some of the low points for you?
Yeah, so I suppose our high points were, I suppose, getting the lease across the line after much deliberation and much, I suppose, we'll say, discussion around the lease and what was part of the lease and what was in and what was out. We got that across the line in January, and that was probably a big high point for the farm in terms of getting the project up and going and arranging that and negotiating with the Grogan family, everything as part of the lease.
There was a lot of issues there in terms of where the farm was going to be and how big the farm was going to be and what it was going to be able to stock and everything like that. So of course that was going to take time.
There was a lot of boxes there to tick in terms of where the farm and the manager and different items there that had to be also. So it was very important to get that across the line and make sure that everything was right with the lease. I suppose in terms of other high points, our National Open Day, as I mentioned, in July, that was a huge, we'll say, high for the farm for the year. A huge amount of farmers attended the Open Day and we'll say it went down really well, and we got really good feedback after that in terms of opening up the doors, and we hope to maybe do that on an annual basis in terms of opening up the doors to farmers and show them what we're doing. Calving performance probably was my high point for 2017. We calved 112 cows on Tullamore Farm in 2017, and we lost 2 calves, which we're really, really happy with. Now, I say that in terms of touch wood because 2018 may not be as good as that, but we hope to build on that in terms of what we've done in 2017, continue that, repeat that, and try and have as good a performance for 2018 if we can. And I suppose another high point was our suckler calf weight gains. We're really, really happy with those in terms of our bull calves done 1.22 kilos a day since birth, and our heifer calves done 1.11. So we're really happy with those high points. I suppose low points, and we don't like to dwell on these, but they're there, and it's important that we tell people about them. I suppose the tetany issues, we lost 2 cows with tetany, 2 confirmed cases of tetany in the springtime. And I suppose in terms of going forward in 2018, I think what we'll do is we'll try and not create any stress around cows and calves at grass at all. I think that's probably maybe we made a little mistake there in terms of dehorning calves, and maybe that was down to facilities in the yard that we hadn't the facilities in the yard at the time, I suppose, maybe to deal with those high numbers, and that's why we've done it outdoors. But I think this year we'll dehorn inside and just let the cows and calves go to grass and keep licks with them as well for as long as possible for the springtime. I suppose our breeding performance, it's one to be forgotten. It was a disaster in terms of stock bulls being purchased. We'd one infertile bull, we had a subfertile bull, but that's something that every farm in the country, I suppose, has to deal with, and we had to deal with the same. And we have 26 cows there now that didn't go in calf, that should have went in calf, and we're going to slaughter them now in January. And we've yet to make a decision, I suppose, on whether we go back up to 120 cows or whether we implement maybe some dairy calf to beef on the farm as well. I suppose silage quality is the last low for 2017, and that's a combination of factors in terms of probably soil fertility, old grasses, And also our silage cut was delayed by 2 weeks due to poor weather conditions. So it has left us maybe with a little bit more average quality silage than the real good stuff. Now, we've a lot of suckler cows in the farm, and that's fine for suckler cows in terms of that feeding for them. But for our weanlings and our finishing cattle, we probably require a little bit better silage. So for 2018, I think that's one of the targets to try and make some real good quality silage on the farm.
I mean, you talk about them as low points, but I think some of the things that were discussed that I heard muttered was the Farmers Journal running a vanity project in Tullamore Farm. But really, what affected Tullamore Farm was what affects every farmer there that you mentioned. You know, issues around dehorning, you know, we all have them, we all have bad experiences with that sometimes. Issues around subfertility, we've had that as well. You know, tetany, I mean, every farmer's had a cow go down with tetany at some point, no matter how careful you are. So these are just realistic things that happen to farmers.
That's it, and I suppose the management team that's built around the farm are really, really adamant, including myself, that everything on the farm that happens on the farm goes out there. And within 2 hours of that cow dying in April of tetany, that was a Saturday morning, and we had it up online in terms of that cow going down. And if we can, I suppose, help other farmers in terms of preventing cases like that, that's what it's all about. And that can be sometimes hard, I suppose, from myself that's really, really involved with the farm. It's not nice sometimes to say that things went wrong, or we've got this wrong, we've got that wrong, but we've got over that, and it's really, really important. I think that's a really important part of the project, that we learn from our mistakes as well as our successes. And it's not just all about success, it's about doing things wrong but trying to do them better the following year.
2018, new year, new look. I've seen the cows on kale, so they're healthy eating already, are they?
Yeah, they're getting lots of exercise. Maybe the weather at the moment maybe mightn't be that amenable to kale, but they're looking well, and they'll come indoors now in the next 3 weeks to calve. And I suppose that's one area where we really have to, I suppose, be mindful of. We're calving 100 cows again in 2018, but we've also got 200 ewes in the yard to lamb. So labour around calving and lambing is going to be huge, and we're going to have to be really mindful of that. And maybe we've taken on a student, Anthony Milligan, has started with us yesterday, and he's there for 3 months. So that's a bit of extra help and a bit of extra relief. And we've some local help as well to come in at weekends. I suppose we're a little bit different on Tullamore Farm in that, I suppose, at home on farmers' own farms, maybe a brother or a father or a mother or a sister can come in and maybe help out in times of, we'll say, peak labour or going away or whatever. But on Tullamore Farm we don't have that, I suppose, luxury, and that we have to take in external help. But we're mindful of that, and we know that, we'll say, our farm manager has to get rest, and our people that are working on the farm during the week have to get rest as well. So we need to manage, I suppose, labour around calving and lambing really, really carefully to make sure that we repeat the 2017 calving performance, and hopefully, touch wood, we will.
And last but not least, you're advertising a position in Tullamore Farm as well.
Yes, we have a farm manager position available at the moment, so we advertised it last week. The closing date is Monday the 15th of January, so anybody out there that's looking for a challenge and looking to work as part of a team on Tullamore Farm, I think it's a really exciting
And it's
project.
a great experience and great to have on your CV as well. You know, it's internationally recognised.
Well, yeah, that's it.
New Zealand, anyway. New Zealand definitely knows about us.
That's it. No, it is a great opportunity. I suppose there's a lot to be learned, and we want to operate to a really high performance. And I think it's a really exciting project.
Stay tuned. Coming up after this break, a tense New Year's Day as a cow decides to calve, and how people in Northern Ireland could have their health service impacted post-Brexit.
Slurry crisis as tanks filling and ground saturated. For more in this week's Farmers Journal, here's Paul Mooney.
Spreading can start next week, but dry weather is urgent. Fodder donations to farmers in Sligo, Roscommon, Clare and Kerry. Designing the ideal sheep shed. Calving checklist, the useful and the essential items on suckler farms. And we preview 2018 markets and prices for milk, beef, sheep meat and grain.
Plus, an 8-page special on slurry spreading equipment. The Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
The 1st of January is traditionally a time to stay up and see in the new year. However, our news correspondent Hannah Quinn Milligan stayed up for a different reason. She anxiously waited for one of her precious pedigree Herefords to calve.
How is she? Is she settled in herself? So it's New Year's Day. Nice bright full moon out. It's at 11 o'clock at night. And we went down to check the cow and the water bag had just come out. So we've brought her up just to be on the safe side in case anything happens. But it shouldn't be too long now until we see a pair of hooves come out. And then a calf. Good girl. Good girl. Well, she likes her feet anyway. Okay, I'll do that. Good girl.
Turn off the light and just leave her. I think it's the best thing.
Okay.
In my chair. So
sneak out after an hour and just see if she's okay, see if you could, you know, just let it know.
Yeah.
So tired of waiting, tired of waiting for you.
It's pitch black, and in time-honoured farm tradition, I've pulled my waterproof trousers over my pyjama bottoms to check this cow. It is very cold outside. She's lying down. She's pushing. I can see her pushing, but I can't see her hind end. Good girl, pet. She's looking behind her. She's pushing again there now. I'd expect to see the hooves out at this stage. Oh, she's getting up. Come on, pet, let's see those hooves out. I don't really want to go in unless I have to. Come on, let's see the two hooves.
Please don't keep me waiting. Please don't keep me waiting. 'Cause I'm so tired of waiting.
It's just gone past 4 o'clock in the morning and I can hear the wind howling outside. It's now 5 hours since the water bag broke, so I'm going out to check the cow, and if I can't see any hooves, I have to check her myself, or I have to decide whether to call the vet to come, because there should be a calf by now. So I'm a bit worried.
That was Hannah Quinn Milligan, and just a note to finish that with a bit of assistance from the vet, the cow gave birth to 2 healthy twin calves.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
My colleague Peter Varley is working away in New Zealand this year. There he met Doug Aviary, a sheep farmer who managed to turn his life around after losing nearly everything to drought, and is now sharing his experience in a successful book.
20 years ago, my business was failing. Severe drought in this area and the farming systems that we're using were failing us really badly. So we set out on a journey of change, and that change was pretty successful. In 2010, we won the South Island Farmer of the Year, so we went from just about destitute to winning that. 2013, I became the agricultural communicator for New Zealand of the Year, and then since that, the Queen's even given me a little bit of a gong, which was kind of nice of her. I don't think she'd probably remember me by person, but anyway, the farm turned around. We went from gross income of about 300,000 New Zealand dollars, and this year we'll do 3 million. So that's kind of a pleasing turnaround. The interesting part about that change was that when I was well on the way to success, it was pointed out to me that in my bad time I'd suffered depression. Of course, I didn't understand that I'd done that, and at the time I just thought everyone else was letting me down, and I was actually the ugly little man in a deep pit. With a lot of success, and with my son, our oldest son, now running the business, I decided last year on the request of New Zealand's biggest publishers, Penguin Random House, to write a book, not thinking that it was likely to be very widely read. But they had a request, could I do something, and they gave me this amazing ghostwriter. And I thought about it a lot. I thought, yeah, it'd be wonderful if we could accelerate permission of broken people to fess up, because that's a huge part of recovery if you're not travelling too well emotionally. If you us men don't like to even admit that there's anything wrong, but if you do fess up, that helps. Second reason was to make people aware that those living with a depressed person are going through hell. My wife went through hell. And the third reason is to make the general community aware that small acts of mercy can be massive in the help and growth of a person. So I look at myself now, and a small number of people helped me to rebirth my life. I think if they'd realised what a monster I was going to become, they might not have done it, but they did. And the book has gone out, Peter, and it's selling hugely across New Zealand, now selling into urban environments as well, and it's also selling hugely into the Australian market as well. So I never saw myself as an author, but I now have to accept that I'm a bestseller author.
So, Doug, in the book, you talk about the time you suffered depression. What was the real spark of that depression? Was it because of where you're farming, that it was such a dry area and it was very hard to go on? You mentioned that you had a number of years of drought.
Yeah.
Was that the
biggest challenge was I was born and bred and taught by my parents to work hard, and I was a very hard worker. And every time a challenge came along in my life, I would always just pull the throttle back and work hard enough to get over the top of that challenge and then carry on. And I've always been an incredibly ambitious person, so I've always wanted to grow the business and grow myself and everything. But the challenge that we got with the drought was too big for me, and I lost hope. And when a human being loses hope, they lose everything. And I lost everything. I lost my sense of my own personal value. I lost my interest in farming, even though it was the only thing I ever wanted to do in my life. And I lost my desire to live, really. It was a terrible period of time. So I guess where I am now, I want to give my time back to the world of anyone that wants to listen, to help empower people to maybe avoid that, but also to share all the amazing rays of light that came into my life, which I'm so acutely aware of now, and to share those with people who want to listen. I don't run around the place telling people that don't want to listen, but it just seems there's a hell of a lot of people that do. And the more that since publishing the book, I've done basically nothing but talk.
And have you travelled around many countries?
Yeah, I've been to South America 2 or 3 times, speaking over there. I've done pretty much all over Australia, and pretty much every square inch of New Zealand I've travelled at some stage. So yeah, a lot of talking.
Yeah, but you've been inspiring a lot of people, and you've been meeting a lot of people that are suffering from depression, and a lot of farmers especially, because I suppose they're been bottling up a lot of emotions, and they're not getting out and trying to talk things out and maybe find a better way of doing things. And
yeah, I think emotional. I talk about building emotional resilience or emotional capital, and it's hugely overlooked, and particularly in New Zealand and Australia. It's not only rural people; it's right across our whole social system. And in New Zealand and Australia, both countries, we lose twice as many people to suicide as we do to road accidents. We spend a lot of time talking about road accidents. We don't spend much time talking about suicide. A few years ago, great All Black John Kerwin stood up and admitted that he'd suffered from a bit of depression. We sometimes call it JK after John Kerwin. People quite often ring me up and say, Doug, I'm having a bit of trouble with the JKs, and I don't care what people call it. But the simple fact of the matter is that people like me and him and a lot of others now, we want to help people realise it's okay to fess up and say you're not travelling too well, being hard and thinking you've got to harden up, and that's just a load of rubbish. And I'm a classic example. You can go on and live a very successful life and be a great contributor to your nation and to your family.
And I suppose one big story in your book as well was the contribution Lucerne had to your overall farming system. I suppose in the past you were trying to do it the conventional way of growing grasses to raise your livestock. What was the difference of incorporating Lucerne into your pasture land?
The Lucerne and the dry land here doubled the value of water, and it doubled the speed. So we get twice as much dry matter per millimetre of rain per hectare as what we used to out of the grasses. And we get double the speed of stock growth. So we've got a double leverage. And of course that was game, set and match for us. A lot of other farmers haven't flicked onto that here yet, but a lot have. And it's never my ambition to be the wealthiest man at the top of the pyramid. I want to be the happiest man, and the happy people generally have farming systems that are highly rewarding financially, environmentally and socially. So we now have sufficient income from this property to employ enough people that no one has to run, that everybody does reasonable hours, that we're all supportive. And when I talk about how geese fly the V, we are flying the V with extreme success, each taking turns of flying the front, honking each other positively along, reaching far greater heights by collaborating together, and producing a great reward for everybody, not just some.
I, for one, Doug, anyways, really enjoyed reading your book. For people in Ireland, how could they get their hands on it? Can they buy it online?
Yes, you can buy it online. It's available from Penguin Random House in New Zealand and pretty much all the online sellers. It's actually cheaper online than it is, and most of them deliver anywhere in the world. So it's hugely available.
So that's Resilient Farmer, and it's available online now. Doug, thanks very much, and all the best in the future. And we hope to see you in Ireland as well at some stage.
I look forward to going back there, my friend.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
As the nuts and twists of Brexit begin to unravel, its impact on border relations between the north and south of Ireland is becoming clearer. One area that will be affected is health. Tracey Donaghey from the Irish Country Living team spoke to Quinn Milligan about the current EU Cross Border Directive and how it could change.
So tell me a bit about what exactly is the EU Cross Border Directive.
So basically it's a scheme that entitles Irish patients who are waiting for surgical procedures in the Republic of Ireland to obtain treatment in Northern Ireland, either in a public or a private setting. And if they choose to access these services in Northern Ireland, you can be reimbursed by the HSE for the costs. And the amount that will be repaid is the amount that the treatment will cost in Ireland, or the cost of your treatment abroad if that is less.
And obviously we can tell by your accent that you might have a vested interest in this as well, Tracey.
Yes, I do indeed. So basically, because I'm from Northern Ireland, and then I found out about this at the ploughing, a consultant from Belfast, I was speaking to him and he was telling me of the benefits it'll have, more so for the people in the south than those in the north, because obviously the waiting lists are much longer in the south, so they'll be able to come up and then get the treatment that they need much quicker than they would if they stayed waiting in the south of Ireland.
Okay, so give us an example then would be, so what would you do if someone wanted to avail of the treatment in Northern Ireland through the EU Cross Border Directive? What should they do?
So basically you would go to your GP, and then this European directive would allow your GP to make a referral to a consultant in Northern Ireland at a private hospital, and then you would then avail of that appointment. You would pay for it, and then you're able to, from then on, you're able to claim the cost for the majority of your medical care from the HSE. However, it is noted that for the first appointment there is a slight shortfall in terms of the reimbursement, but after that the EU Cross Border Directive tends to cover the costs in full.
And I heard a phrase, Brexit fatigue. We're probably sick of hearing the word Brexit, but it will, of course, have an impact on this scheme. So what could that be?
Yeah, so basically they are led to believe that this will form as part of the Brexit negotiations. For people in the Republic of Ireland, it should mean that they can continue to come to Northern Ireland. However, for those in Northern Ireland who are able also to come down to the Republic for treatment, that may stop, but they do believe that for the people in the Republic of Ireland, they'll be able to continue making use of this scheme after Brexit.
That's it from the podcast this week. Thanks for listening. And remember, you can keep in touch with all the farm news on the Irish Farmers Journal Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat and our mobile app. The sound engineer this week was Ferdia Mooney. From me, Thomas Hubert, have a good farming week and talk to you next Wednesday evening.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.